Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be comparing last year's flagship Samsung Galaxy S22 to the recently released S23. If you're in the market for a new phone, you may be wondering if you can save a few bucks by getting last year's phone. Or maybe you're someone like me that already had the S22, and you're wondering if it would be worth it to upgrade after only 1 year. Well, in this video, I'll answer both those questions. I've had the S22 as my daily driver since it launched in February of last year, and I've been using the S23 for the last 3 months to make sure I put it through its paces before making this video. Interestingly, on paper, these two phones are almost identical, but there are two huge differences that make one of them the easy choice between the two. But we'll get to that. Let's start with design. Now, full disclosure is that Samsung did not send me these phones nor sponsor any portion of this video. The S22 and S23 are practically the exact same size, with both sporting the same 6.1-inch screen and 1080p resolution. The front and side profiles of the phones remain largely unchanged as well. Around back, both still have 3 cameras in the same location, but while the S22 carried over the camera bump that extended seamlessly from the bezel like the S21, the S23 does away with it, with a totally flat back other than the 3 camera lenses that protrude out. Design is a subjective thing, but I personally really like the design of both phones, and I'm glad Samsung hasn't changed much in the past few years. That said, I do slightly prefer the raised camera bump of the S22, but if you're someone who puts a case on your phones like me, you likely won't notice the difference at all. Now about that display. While they are the same size and resolution, one difference is that the S23 sports a max peak brightness of 1750 nits, which is 35% brighter than the S22 at 1300 nits. Now, I personally never had an issue with the S22's brightness in the daytime, but the S23 is on another level. And while 35% sounds like an impressive increase, there is a lot of diminishing returns when it comes to brightness, so realistically, you likely wouldn't notice any difference unless you're comparing them side by side, like I am here. The only other difference of note here is that the S23 now has Gorilla Glass Victus 2 on the front and back, versus the Gorilla Glass Victus Plus that was on the S22. Both are very good scratch-resistant materials, and I haven't had any issue with either phone, even though I do live on the dangerous side by having 2 kids under the age of 4 and no screen protector. But the S23 should just be a hair more durable over the long term. There are slightly different colorways available between each phone, and that's up to you, but I've got the Phantom Black on both here, and I really love the matte black finish. Next, let's talk about cameras, because not much has changed here either. Around the back, you're getting the exact same cameras and sensors, including the 50 megapixel main camera, the 12 megapixel ultra-wide, and the 10 megapixel 3x telephoto. Now, Samsung claims to have made some software tweaks to improve nighttime and low light photography. Oh, and hey, great news, now you can shoot 8K video up to 30 frames per second, unlike the S22, which was capped at 24 frames in 8K, so it's incredible, right? All jokes aside, there is one new camera on the S23, and that's the front selfie camera. This has been upgraded to a new 12 megapixel sensor instead of the 10 megapixel S22, which means you can now shoot full 4K video on that front camera. Now let's check out some camera and video samples from both phones so you can compare for yourself. Let me know in the comments which phone's camera you prefer. Now here is a 4K video test using the selfie camera on the S22 in a well-lit room using the built-in microphone, so you can hear what that sounds like, and this is what it looks like. And now here is a 4K video test using the brand new selfie sensor on the S23 using the built-in microphone, so you can hear what that sounds like, and this is what it looks like. Okay, let's get into the two most impactful updates, performance and battery. The biggest drawback to the S22 was its chipset, which in the US was the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, but elsewhere users were limited to the Exynos 2200. I've got the Snapdragon version here, and while it's an extremely fast chip, it notoriously suffered from bad thermals which caused throttling issues since its release, and more importantly kicked out a ton of heat. The S22 line was the first mobile phone to get the 8 Gen 1 chipset, but Qualcomm moved quickly last year to release an updated 8 Plus Gen 1 for other devices, which solved these major issues. Moving to the S23, Samsung has axed all the Exynos chips, and so all the S23 line globally will now ship with the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which is a massive upgrade. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find fault in the actual performance of either chipset, as they're both plenty zippy for daily use. But I found the S23 to run considerably cooler under the same use, and its efficiency contributes directly to improved battery life. The battery for the S23 is only slightly larger than the S22, sporting a capacity of 3900 mAh, which is only a 5% larger capacity over the 3700 mAh battery of the S22. That said, this small improvement on paper, when combined with the more efficient Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset, makes a huge difference in battery consumption. This is the crux of the issue that I had with the S22. Even though I was happy with the phone in almost every way, I suffered from major battery anxiety anytime I knew I'd be away from home for the day. I resorted to carrying two battery banks when traveling to ensure that I could top off the phone at least twice if I needed to. On a normal day of use, I was ending the day at 10 to 15% battery with only an average of 2 hours screen on time. With the S23, I'm usually ending the day with over 40% battery, often with closer to 3 hours of screen on time. This is a major difference and has totally changed the way I use my phone. This is the reason I wanted to wait a couple months of testing out the new S23 to confirm that this upgraded battery life wasn't just a fluke of having a brand new phone, but it has continued to be excellent. Now the S23 is still a relatively small phone with a small battery, so it's never going to give you multiple days of battery on standby, but just knowing that I'll get to bed each night without having to charge my phone during the day is huge. If you're shopping for both of these phones right now, another difference to note is that the S23, being 1 year newer, will receive an additional year of software and security updates, which for Samsung means 4 total years of coverage, which is fantastic. Alright, we're wrapping up this phone comparison, but we need to talk pricing. Here in the US, the S22 is still on sale on Samsung's website for $699, which is only $100 cheaper than the newer S23. For that price, I would recommend you go with the S23 10 times out of 10. If you currently own the S22 and are struggling with battery life and heat like I was, then I really do recommend you look into getting the S23. There are often carrier deals on Samsung devices, so it shouldn't be tremendously difficult to pick up the S23 at a discount. Long story short, the S23 is everything the S22 should have been, but was unfortunately hampered by its chipset and that small battery. Outside of those two key points, the rest of the S23 is a pretty minor incremental upgrade. So I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could hit that like button and consider subscribing for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.